This is the story of a big businessman named Min-Kyu. He has a dangerous disease. He was allergic to humans. Whenever he touches a human being, blisters appear on his body turns red, and even he feels difficulty in breathing. Min-Kyu was fed up of his disease. He wants to spend life like an ordinary human being. He also wants a friend in his life. He wants to get married, but he used to stay alone because of his disease. That's why he locked himself in the house for 10 years. Min-Kyu gets his treatment at his house. One day, his doctor comes home and asks Min-Kyu to live with his disease because there was no cure for his sickness. Meanwhile, he gives him a wristwatch to wear. There were different colors, which will tell the condition of his sickness. In blue color, the allergy will be normal. In yellow, there will be a slight attack, and in orange color, Min-Kyu's veins will stop working. As there will be red color, he will die in a while. One day, a scientist named Hong contacts Min-Kyu and says he has made a robot along with his team that will work like a human. Min-Kyu will not get an allergy attack, even if he touches her. The scientist Hong tells her the price of this robot is $100 billion. The next day, Min-Kyu went to the lab and gets shocked to see the robot. It was made while giving a pretty face. Min-Kyu touches her, but nothing happens to him, and he becomes happy to see this. The robot tells her name, AG3, and Min-Kyu was ready to buy that AG3 robot. He spends a lot of money on this robot. The next day, the scientists were testing the robot, and a scientist bounces a soda bottle from which a drop falls on AG3, and there was a huge short circuit. The processing system of that robot gets damaged. The system with which she works. Seeing this, the whole team get worried because they have to deliver AG3 to Min-Kyu, and they have taken money from him. The team thinks it would take a lot of Tim to repair it, and their deal would also cancel here. Hong gets an idea. He made AG3 by giving her the face of her old friend named Jia. He goes to meet her and tells her the whole matter. His plan was to send Jia, means a real human, as a robot to Min-Kyu. At first, she hears the matter and refuses, but when Hong gives her money, she agrees because she was poor. The scientist team takes Jia to the lab and makes her learn all the thing of robot AG3, how does she works, how she stands up, how she gives water and everything. Later, they make her wear the same clothes like that robot hair extension, and lenses were placed in her eyes which will work as a camera through which they will spy on Jia and Min. Anyhow, Jia was sent to Min-Kyu's house after making her ready as a robot. As Min-Kyu opens the coffin, Jia gets scared to see him actually. The thing is, Jia delivered food to Min-Kyu a few days ago, but Min-Kyu didn't like that food. That's why he didn't pay Jia, and when Jia tried to stop her, Min-Kyu ran away from there so that Jia couldn't touch him, from which he is allergic, but Min-Kyu doesn't remember all this. Now he calls Hong and asks about Jia's fear and anger. Hearing this, Hong tells him a story and says this: AG3 robot has two modes. One is operational and the other is friend mode. In the operational mode, she becomes angry, but in friend mode, she will behave like humans. Moreover, he says there is a button behind her neck. Just press it and everything will be fine. Min-Kyu does the same and tests Jia, means she was a robot in front of him. Min-Kyu wants to see if she works properly or not. Meanwhile, the light in Hong's lab turns off. Now Jia has to handle all this alone because Hong can't contact her. Min-Kyu asks her to open a box that she has to open with a maths code, but Jia was weak in maths, so she breaks the box. The next task was to peel off a boiled egg in 10 seconds, and because Jia worked in a restaurant, so she passed this test easily. Min-Kyu becomes happy with all this and thinks of keeping her with him. The light comes in Hong's lab and they get connected with Jia's lenses. They see Jia yelling at Min-Kyu because he places his hand on her back to check her battery. Min-Kyu calls Hong and says, "You are cheating me because the battery of this robot is damaged." But he says there is nothing like this. Whenever you feel that the battery of this robot is showing problem, just bring it to me. I will fix it. There could be a short circuit if you will touch her. After it, Min-Kyu goes to his kitchen to drink water, but suddenly, stop breathing. Jia runs to him and pats his back. This makes him fine in a while. He asks, "How did you do this without my order?" She says, "There are a lot of functions in me, and with their help, I can do work on my own." Here, Min-Kyu touches Jia for the first time, but surprisingly, nothing happens to him. There was no allergic reaction. Even Jia was an ordinary human and real and just pretending to be a robot in front of him. At night, Hong brings Jia to lab on pretext of fixing the battery and says, you was about to trick us all. What would happen if Min-Kyu discovers the truth? This makes Jia furious and thinks she didn't do her task well, so she leaves. After it, Hong and his team find out that AG3 is sent to Africa for repairing where it would take 2 more weeks. At the same time, Hong gets a call from Min Q, and he says, I like the robot AG3 made by you. I want to keep it for a month. Hong doesn't understand that. Now what will he do? He calls Jia back and asks her to pretend a few days more as a robot in front of Min Q. He offers her a huge amount in return and says, we will take you back in the line each night on the pretext of charging you. Hearing this, Jia was again ready to be a robot. One day, Jia goes to the washroom and was cleaning it with Min Q's expensive perfumes. Meanwhile, Min Q comes and says after seeing her, robots can't go near water like this. So, how are you doing all this? Jia replies, as a robot. I am an advanced robot that can do anything. When Min Q was about to turn, he notices sweating on Jia's face, but when he again turns behind, his foot slips on a soap and his back gets injured. Likewise, one day Jia spoils the card house made by Min Q while cleaning, and it took him 10 years to make it. Seeing it, Min Q becomes furious, and Jia says my battery is only 5% and acts to shut off. Min Q calls Hong at home and asks, what is the problem in his robot? I am bearing loss because of her mistakes. Hong says, give me some time, I will fix it. One day, a special guest of Min Q was coming, so he forbids Jia to go out actually. His special guest was a girl whom Min Q liked a lot. When that girl comes to his home and touches Min Q's shoulder while meeting him, he gets an allergic attack. The girl doesn't know about his sickness, so he makes excuse of a meeting and runs inside the house. He tries to reach the room where his allergy injections were, but couldn't inject the injection because of weakness. Seeing this, Jia comes and Min Q was unconscious laying down. From here, we are shown the story of the time when Min Q hadn't this illness and everything was normal for him. Min Q becomes happy when he made a first house of cards one day. It was Min Q's birthday party, everyone was gathered and happy. When Min Q was returning home with his parents from the party, his balloon comes in front of the car due to which he couldn't see the tuk-tuk coming from front. Their car had an accident, and Min Q's parents died in that accident. A lot of people were gathered on their funeral and were trying to become Min Q's guardian actually. They were not interested in Min Q, but were behind his dad's property. One day, Min Q gets a notice from Madam X about whom we will know further. It was written that, son, you don't have to sign any papers. One day, he was sitting alone, and his friend comes to him who has papers of adoption. He says, look, sign these papers, and after it, you will become my brother. And Min Q signed those papers, but then he sees the hand of his friend changed into a devilish hand. He gets scared and runs from there. Now his friend comes back to his dad and gives him papers. Min Q has wrote something else instead of his signatures. Min Q comes home and starts living alone because it was in his mind that people are evil and behind his property. Since then, he was allergic to humans, and none knew this except for his special doctor. With this, the story shifts to the present, and Min Q comes to his senses. He finds Jia near him and says, I have seen a dream that everyone is my enemy. He was surprised that he has become fine. He starts spending more time with Jia. Then one day he goes to meet the girl whom he likes. The girl again shakes hand with Min Q while leaving, and he gets an allergic attack. He tries to inject his injection, but then he thinks until when he will spend his life like this. So he goes to throw his injection in the water. Meanwhile, Jia comes to him, and his allergy was ended without injecting any injection. The temperature of his clock was also normal at blue color. They were returning home, and Min Q collides a man, but even then, nothing happens to him. And seeing all this, he doesn't believe that he has become fine. Now, to see if he is fine or not, he decides to go in crowd with Jia. He has never done this before in his life. He again collides a boy and nothing happens to him. When a man touches him even this time, nothing happens to him. He calls his doctor and says, I am fine now. Meanwhile, a man hits him, and Jia was also not with him. At that time, Min Q again gets an allergic attack, but he becomes fine when he sees Jia, who was standing at a far distance. Min Q says to the doctor on call, there is someone whom I see and become fine. The doctor was also surprised to hear all this. Min Q runs to Jia and says, I will buy the biggest battery of the world for you. You will be with me forever. Reaching home, he again tells everything to the doctor, and he says, Min Q, I am shocked that you have become fine without injection. Now Min Q keeps Jia with him all the time, and for him, she was still just a robot. On another side, it is shown in the lab that the real AG3 robot has repaired, but it will take a little more time to work properly. Jia finds out that AG3 robot is repaired. She becomes sad because she is now habitual of living with Min Q. One day, Min Q takes Jia to the hotel, and the girl whom Min Q likes has come with her dad. He makes Jia sit on another table. Jia doesn't like this, and she doesn't talk to Min-kyu when he returns. Min-kyu also found out that he is fine until AG3 robot means Jia will be with him. One day he stops at a gas station and his hand touches with worker's hand while taking the credit card, but moving ahead when he notices that someone has touched him. Nothing happened to him. He tells this to his doctor and he says, "You have become fine, so send that robot back whom you kept in home," means he was talking about Jia, but Min-kyu has fallen in love with Jia. He goes to Hong and tells him what is in his heart. Hong says, "You are talking about a robot that was designed before." But Min-kyu says, "Then what should I do? I am going crazy. How can I forget her?" Hong says, "There is a way. I will delete all the memories of that robot due to it. She will forget everything, and you also move somewhere else." Now Jia was made, AG3 robot, and sent to Min-kyu. For the last time, they look at each other and there was snowfall outside. They went for a walk for the last time. They return home. Min-kyu thanks Jia that she made him fine and then makes her wear his mom's locket later. He hugs her and weeps a lot while pressing the reset button. On the other side, the AG3 robot also finds out that Min-kyu's folder is deleted. They weep a lot while missing each other. Jia weeps so much that she becomes sick. The next morning, they start a new life and Jia was ready to go to her grandma. She was sitting in the train and Min-kyu also reaches the same train coincidentally because he saw Jia and he thinks that girl looks like AG3 robot. They were sitting in front of each other but don't talk because Jia was forbidden to talk to Min-kyu. He calls Hong and says, "I have seen a face like your robot." He replies, "Yes, I have given a special one's face to that robot." Min-kyu asks, "Can I talk to that person?" He says no, and saying this, he disconnects the call. But Min-kyu doubts, so he chases Jia and reaches the place where she do the job and live with her grandmother. Her grandma runs a hotel. Everyone left, but Min-kyu was sitting and waiting for her. Jia gets fed up and says, "Yes, my face was given to AG3, and in return I was given a huge amount." Telling all this, she asks him to leave, but Min-kyu wants to stay with her, and he becomes friends with her grandma in a few days. And he spends all the moments with Jia, which he thought he spent with robot AG3. One day, he comes back and doesn't find Jia in the hotel. She left her grandmother's house. Now he looks for her like crazy, but then finds her near the seashore. He sees the locket in Jia's neck that he gave AG3 robot. Jia tries to hide it, but Min-kyu has seen it. His condition wasn't well, and he understands that he is cheated. His allergy level reached the red color, and this has never happened to him before. He falls down, and there were a few chances for him to survive. Meanwhile, the doctor and Hong arrive, and they take him home while giving him an injection. He was treated. Jia wanted to meet Min-kyu and tell him everything, but the doctor forbids her. A special assistant of him comes to Min-kyu when he recovered, who asks him to file a case against Jia and Hong's company, that they cheated him. Here we find out that assistant was actually Jia's brother and left Min-kyu's job after Jia's cheating. Min-kyu goes to Hong's team and evacuate their lab because of cheating him. On another side, Jia was busy cooking for Min-kyu. She was daily cooking and bringing food for him, but Min-kyu was furious at her and throws her food in the dustbin daily. Jia says, "Do whatever you want to. I will daily come to give you food." Min-kyu was missing Jia when he goes to sleep at night. He goes out to his servant who was sitting by the fire and asks, "Did you lie to me ever?" "Tell me." The servant says no, but every person tells some lies in his life. The next morning, Jia was bringing food for Min-kyu, but her bike gets an accident because a boy comes on the way and her hand gets injured. Min-kyu becomes restless when Jia didn't come to Min-kyu on time because he loves her a lot. Jia comes at night instead of day and sets the food on his table. As per routine, she was leaving, but then Min-kyu comes and says, "You look so happy while lying and cheating on me." Jia says, "Listen to me. I want to tell you so many things," but Min-kyu wasn't in the mood to listen anything and breaks the glass furiously. The glass hits Jia's hand and her hand starts bleeding. Even then, she apologizes to Min-kyu and leaves. Jia's friend comes to Min-kyu's house in the morning. She tries to make him understand while saying, "Leave your ego, otherwise you will be alone and imprisoned in your memories." Jia is leaving for Australia with Hong's team, so stop her. Min-kyu acts to be normal in front of Jia's friend, but was worried deep inside. The next morning, he goes to Jia's residence and sees Hong's team there, but he left in his car and returned home. After it, he sees the news on the TV that today 70 stars will be seen on the sky. He finds Jia's umbrella when he went to change his umbrella. Seeing it, he gets lost in their love memories. On the other hand, AG3 was working properly, and Min-kyu decides to meet Jia because he finds out that he can't live without her. He goes to meet Jia on a rock, and Jia says she acted as a robot. You were spending your time with a human being, not with a robot. Meanwhile, Min-kyu misses the moment spent with Jia. He says, "Tell me the truth, Jia. How many more lies have you told me? How stupid was I that I couldn't differentiate between a real human and a robot?" Jia says, "I haven't told you any other lie than this. I like to spend time with you on this." He asks her to sit near him and says, "Tell me whatever is in your heart." She says, "I remember all the moments spent with you. I didn't want to lose you, and I tried many times to tell you the truth, but just remained quiet that you might get your allergy back, because this was ended only when you remove all the old memories from your mind." Hearing this, Min-kyu moves Jia closer, but then remembers that he has an allergy and says to Jia, "We were together till here, now you go your way, and I go my way. I will go far from everyone where humans will not come near me. I will start spending my life like before," but Jia stops him. She weeps a lot and says, "Please don't go. I loved you a lot, and you are the person for whom I was waiting in my life." Hearing this, Min-kyu hugs Jia. Many stars are shown breaking on the sky. The next morning, they go on a long drive. Min-kyu sees the allergy sign on his watch when he takes coffee from the cafe. When he sees Jia sleeping in the car, his allergy becomes normal. Then he drops her home and asks her to meet soon. After it, he comes home and calls his doctor. The doctor says to Min-kyu, "Your sickness has no cure. This disease can attack at any time or can be cured at any time." It is shown in the next scene that a rich man named Martin comes to buy AG3 from Hong. She was fine now. He says, "I will use this robot as a dangerous weapon," and he buys her. Actually, Martin asked Hong's team to make this robot. Now Min-kyu comes and asks about AG3, but Hong says, "Martin, a dangerous culprit has taken her." Martin was ready to go with AG3 in a huge coffin, but when he opens it, the robot wasn't there. On the other hand, we see AG3, robot, wandering in the city. She has no memories and doesn't know anything about herself. Min-kyu also returns home, and a small cute robot says hi. He sees Jia, and Hong's team is cooking in his kitchen. Jia tells him that she is leaving, but Min-kyu becomes sad hearing this and starts making excuses that the weather isn't well, so they should stay here. AG3 is shown watching videos that were saved in her, one of Martin's video in which he says he will use her as a dangerous weapon. She also sees Hong's team's video in which they all say, "You are a friendly robot and will become friends with humans." AG3 deletes Martin's video and keeps Hong's video, which means she made friendship with humans in her mind. In the next scene, we see Min-kyu meeting Madam X. She is the same lady who wrote a note for Min-kyu in his childhood, "Don't sign any papers," and she used to help him all the time. She tells him that Martin is a dangerous man. It will be beneficial for many people if we caught him. A man has evidence against him. After it, Min-kyu goes to meet that man and asks him for the evidence, but that man was scared, and Min-kyu says, "Look, our police team will protect you, so you don't need to be scared." Now the man was ready to give evidence against Martin to Min-kyu. Min-kyu sent the evidence to the police. Jia also takes Min-kyu to a place where a huge deal was going on to buy AG3, but reaching there, Min-kyu finds out that AG3 robot is missing. Martin was also worried because there were his recordings in AG3, and he was scared that if the police discover this, he will be caught. We see AG3 wandering on the roads, who don't know anything about her, and sits near a beggar on the road. Then she asks for her address, but everyone was searching for her. Jia and Min-kyu were looking for her on the roads, while Hong's team was checking the CCTV cameras. But soon Martin's companions discover AG3's location. Now two strangers come in front of her and says, "We are your relatives." AG3. Robot sits in their car. Meanwhile, the police come and arrest Martin and his companions. Hong's team brings AG3 back to their lab. They all were happy that they have found AG3 and didn't let her go in wrong hands. Jia and Min-kyu were happy and were having food along with Hong's team and watching AG3's videos when she met humans outside. AG3 has done a good job. Hong says, "I am going to change her face that night." They all say her goodbye together. Min-kyu also tells everything about him in front of media, that he is allergic to humans, but everything is getting fine with the passage of time. He thanks those who made him fine, means Jia and Hong's team. Moreover, he tells that he will spend a lot of money on a robot telling this. His market shares climb up rapidly. He was looking happy and satisfied while taking the right decisions in his life. He calls Jia and asks her to meet at dinner. He tells Jia that her brother still doesn't want to do job with him, and he is ready to resign. Now, Jia meets her brother and talks about this in front of his wife on it. His wife forbids him to resign. The next morning, Jia's brother goes to Min-kyu and apologizes he has taken his resignation back. Now the story after some time is shown when Hong was about to launch a new AI robot. On the other hand, Jia's brother also becomes a manager in Min-kyu's company. Jia is shown showing her company's lamps to customers, and she has to go to meet Min-kyu after a while. Hong's team and Jia's family were already there. She comes his home, and a car stops outside his house from which a soldier comes out. He was none other than Min-kyu, who has become a soldier. Jia comes closer but slips, and Min-kyu handles her. He was staring at her, means they have moved far in their life. Min-kyu's illness was also cured. After this lovely moment, they are shown heading towards Min-kyu's house where everyone was waiting for them. The series comes to an end here.